Get your Bibles out, turn to the book of Psalms, Psalm 140. Psalm 140. And recall that this is a song by David. He's addressed it to the chief musician because of its import. And he wants to be sure and careful that this song is preserved. And the reason why is because this one we're calling the cry of the hunted soul. And oftentimes in our lives here on this earth, you'll find, as David, you'll find people that hate us. We'll find people that have enemies. We'll find enemies, and then we'll find people that want to cause trouble, gossips and slanders and all those things. So David wants to make sure that you're encouraged by this psalm and that you would learn how to handle the persecution the best way, and that is, as of course always, is to seek God in prayer first. Don't do anything without seeking God first. All right? So we're in verse number 4 now, Psalm 140, verse 4. Notice it says, "Keep me, O Lord." Now let's stop there a minute. What does it mean to keep me? Right? The idea, though, is to have hold on you and to protect like a shepherd keeps the sheep. That's the idea here of that relationship with the Father. He wants the Father to have a hold on us and to be protecting us. He says, "Keep me," and then he has this cry in his heart, "Oh Lord." And don't go by that without thinking about what he's doing here. He's having this heart anguish with this affliction and the trouble he's having with his enemies. And you know, David had trouble pretty much all of his life. And he's pouring out his heart here when he says, "Oh Lord," it's no light term. When he uses the word Lord, and it's all caps, so that's Jehovah, that's no small matter to a Jew. Okay? Remember, they took that name very serious. And they wouldn't just lightly mention it. When David's pouring out his heart now, he's saying, "Oh Lord." Now, a lot of times we hear people saying that kind of stuff out in public, and it's not really what they should be saying. I hear a lot of them saying, "Oh God," and they don't mean it in a good way. And they're not really talking to God. They're just using it as a byword. And that's wrong as well. But notice he's pouring out his heart, and he says, "Keep me, O Lord, from what? The hands of the wicked." The hands of the wicked. To fall in their hands would be a calamity for sure. If you fall in the hands of your enemies, what's going to happen to you? Right? You're going to get hurt. They're going to accomplish their designs. Their traps, their snares are going to work their designs, and they're going to accomplish their goals of destroying you. And they're not settled with just a little bit of blood. They want the whole enchilada. They want everything destroyed that has to do with you. So here he asks the Lord, he says, "Don't let me be falling into the hands of the wicked. Rather, hold on to me and keep me from that." So David, in his most pitiful plight, chose to fall into the hand of a chastening God rather than be left in the power of men. In other words, he wanted to be held on to by God. Even if God had a reason to chasten him for doing something, that's fine, he says, as long as you keep me from the hands of the wicked. That's what he wants. No creature among the wild beasts of the wood is so terrible an enemy to man as man himself when he's guided by evil and impelled by violence. In other words, men are cruel. When they're doing their wickedness and their violence, they can be extremely cruel. And we've seen examples of that in wars. We've seen examples of that with prisoners. We've seen examples of that with livestock. All kinds of things that men can be cruel to. Yet the enemy here that David's talking about is the one that's actually trying to slay him, trying to do away with him, trying to do away with his kingdom, trying to do away with him completely. So this would include Saul, and all of Saul's men that were helping him, Doeg and all those. And then also would include the others, that like Absalom and the other ones that were causing him grief in his own kingdom. So when we fall into the hands of men, we can expect to be cruelly treated, and that's what he wants to avoid here. And he does that by seeking the Lord's protection and the Lord's hands over him. So the Lord, by providence and grace, can keep us out of the power of the wicked. And that's the avenue we need to approach in prayer, is that God keep us out from the power of the wicked. Okay? In other words, don't let them have power over us. Don't let them take us, capture us. Rather, take away their power from us. And that's an important part of praying about this, is to get the enemy's power taken away. You can't do it. You'd want to do it, but you can't do it. Only God can take and remove that power through providence and grace from off of your life and protect you at the same time and give you strength to face these things. And most of the time you'll find, like Job, God allowed Job to go through the fire for our benefit. God allowed Job to go through all those trials, all those dangers, all those accusations by his so-called friends, all of that stomping him while he was down, kicking him while he was down. All of that he went through for us, so that we could see we don't have to have anything to worship God. We just need to be faithful to God, and things will work out. Now, it might not work out according to our time schedule, and most of the time it doesn't, because we want it to be like instant, like sending a text or something, just like that. That's how we want it. It doesn't work like that with God. God has his own time schedule, and God will do it. And here David's taking and making sure that through God's providence and grace, he's relying upon that and asking for God to take away the power that's prevailing against him. God alone can do this, for neither our own watchfulness nor the faithfulness of friends can secure us against the serpentine assaults of the foe. In other words, we don't have the ability to stop attacks on ourselves. Our friends can help to a point. We can help to a point to stop it, but we don't have the power to stop it when it's an evil, wicked person bent upon destroying us. So we have to rely upon God alone to do it, not ourselves. And that's the rub. Most of the time, what do we want to do? Right. We want to fix it. We want to do it. We want to do it our way. We want to do it fast. We want to do it super fast. Yet, that's not how it's handled. Our handling it means turning it over to God and seeking God and saying, God, I need your preservation. I need your help. I need you to hedge me in this storm, and that you keep the enemy away from me and their power off of me when you can. Now, sometimes God allows the hedge to be lifted, like Job, for a purpose, not to punish us, but to prove to us our faithfulness to him and to give us those trials to make us a better Christian. Trials are there for us to become better, not worse. Trials are there for us to learn and gain experience, and therefore teaching others that come after us to do the same thing, and showing them the experience we've had, and showing them this is how you handle the situation. First and foremost, you go to God and put God on the trail of the enemy, and you trust and wait on his protection. All right? We have need to be preserved from the smooth as well as the rough hands of the ungodly, for their flatteries may harm us as much as their smears. You think about that, you got to watch out for the one that comes up and pats you on the shoulder and then stabs you in the back. You got to be careful about that. You have to be careful about these smooth, serpentine-like tongues that begin to wag at us. Then look at number 8. It says, Jehovah must be our keeper, or evil hands will do what evil hearts have imagined and evil lips have threatened. They weren't being secretive about these threats. David knew about the threats. They weren't sneaking around doing it. They were very open in doing it. And there's a big difference. If you got a sneaky one, well, that's tough. But they're out in open defying him and challenging him, say, hey, we're going to get you. So David had to look to the one source that could help him to escape them. See what he says here in the next part of the verse. He says, preserve me from the violent man. Now, I like that word preserve in the Bible. It's not talking about jelly. What's it talking about? Sealing me in. Like, remember when Moses was up on the mountain and asked to see God? What did God tell him? No man can see me and live. But I tell you what, Moses, you get in the cleft of that rock. I'll put my hand over that cleft where you'll be protected until my hind parts are showing. And just a little bit of that, because you'll die if you get the whole dose. So he did, and he let his fingers crack just a little bit, and Moses just saw a little bit of the glory of God. And what did it do to him? It changed him. You see, God can preserve us from the violent men. He can put us in the cleft of the rock. He can put us in the fortress or the tower. He can put us in the shelter that we need to be in to be safe. And that's what we have to rely on. He will strike anyhow, use any weapon, smite from any quarter. This enemy is so furious that he is reckless of his own life if he may accomplish his detestable design. Lord, preserve us by your omnipotence. And that's what we were looking at in Psalm 139. One of the key points of that psalm is God's all-powerfulness, his omnipotence. And when we say omnipotence, that means over everything. And we're looking at God's sovereignty on Sunday mornings. We're looking at his sovereignty in salvation. But God's sovereignty doesn't stop at salvation. His sovereignty is over all things in this created universe. All things visible and all things invisible, God is sovereign over. And that's what gives us hope and encouragement, knowing God can handle it, God does handle it, God will handle it. So he's asking to be preserved, and he's asking the Lord's omnipotence to be there for him. And then he explains what they're trying to do. Look at the next phrase. Who have purposed to overthrow my goings. Now, what does it mean, to overthrow my goings? Right. His goings means his daily walk through his affairs. Now, if you're a king, you have to do certain things and go to certain places and perform your duties as a king. Yet, he hears about these ambushes and traps and snares that we'll be looking at next in verse 5. He hears about those, and it starts hindering his ministry of being a king. It starts hindering him. So he says, they've proposed to overthrow my goings. They want to get me. They want to defeat me. They want to hurt my ministry as king and as prophet and as poet and warrior. David was all those things, wasn't he? He was a shepherd. He was a poet. He was a musician. He was a king. He was a warrior. He was all those things, yet, and these men want to stop all that. They don't like him. Why? Because David's still standing for God, and most of the time you'll find if you take a stand for God, they're going to hate you. They're going to hate you. So we must be aware of what these wicked people are going to do. Their own goings are wicked, and therefore they hate the goings of the righteous. They don't like it when they see us going to church. They don't like it when they see us preaching or teaching. They don't like it when we pray in public. They don't like it. Boy, it gets them boiling mad. And you hear all these Satanists and all those guys saying, hey, they ain't got a right to pray in public and things like that. They're interfering with our religion. Well, they ain't got no religion. That's just an excuse. But what they're doing is they're hating a righteous way. And you'll find that's more and more prevalent in our society today. They don't want to hear about God, do they? They've taken him out of schools. They've taken him out of the courtrooms. They're going to take him out of every place they can so that they don't have to hear about God and his righteousness. Why? Because they're worried, aren't they? If they know God is righteous and they're not living right, what's that tell them? That's what gives them problems and scares them. And that's why they will lash out against God's people. Now notice verse 5, it says, the proud have hid what? Snare, hid a snare for me. Hid a snare for me. Now what's a snare? Yeah, kind of a trap. It's not a mechanical trap. It's more of just like a wire or a rope that's knotted up and it's set for a trigger. And if you get near it and you put your hand inside that snare, what happens? They got you. Right? It said the proud have hit a snare. Proud as they are, they stoop to these mean actions. They use a snare. They hide it away that their victim may be taken like a poor hare that is killed without a warning, killed in the usual run by a snare which it could not see. And what David is saying here is that when I go and do my business, I see what they're doing. They're setting snares for me. And they want me to go left or go right, get off of the straight and narrow path. They want me to deviate, and boom, they've got me. So David knows that he has to stay on the straight and narrow path. And all Christians should realize that we have to stay on that straight and narrow path because there are many snares beside the path to get us off the path and to take us away from God. David's enemies wished to snare him in his path of service. Saul had laid many snares for David, but the Lord preserved him from them. How many times did David get a spear chucked at him? Or a javelin, they said. Saul had a javelin, not a spear. Quite a few. And then what did he do? He tried to hunt him down. You could just get a picture as you're reading about David and Saul and how David is on one side of the mountain, Saul on the other, just going round and round and round. Finally, Saul gets tired and goes to sleep in a cave, and David's already in there. But in all of that, God protected David. And God gave David the wisdom in how to handle it, not to kill Saul, because that was God's anointed, but rather to remind Saul that he had done nothing wrong, that he indeed was a righteous man, a goodly man, and that he had done nothing wrong for this action to be taken. And several times you see where Saul repented of what he was doing, but the whole time he was trying to kill David. Boy, he was hot in anger because he was jealous over David. And the next thing it says, he's laid snares, and the next one is and cords. Now when you have a net, what do you have to draw it together? You got to have a rope, or you got to have cords to draw that net together. Okay? And then when they catch you, what are they going to do with them ropes? They're going to tie you up, just like you would a wild beast, just like you would anything that's caught in a snare or a trap. You'll find that they use those cords. And those cords of love are sweet, but the cords of hate are as cruel as death itself. And then notice the next phrase, it says, they have spread a net by the wayside. If a snare don't get him, then they're going to put a net out. Okay? So there's a small thing, and then there's a bigger thing. Because if you're catching a man with a net, how big is that net got to be? Pretty big. Now in this way he's speaking figuratively, although they may indeed have been some big nets or snares trying to catch him, but David was able to stay on that straight and narrow and not be caught in their nets. Where it would be near its prey, where the slightest divergence from the path would bring the victim into it. Then there's another word here that's kind of not used very much. They have set gins for me, Selah. All right, what is a gin? It is. It's more of a mechanical trap, like a bear trap or something like that, a hard spring trap. Okay? They call it gin back then. All right, so again, like if you've ever done any trapping, you can set those traps in various places where you think that animal makes its normal run. And what happens if you set that trap down where it makes its run and you put a little smell on it? You ever watched the trapping movie, you can see this, and you'll see that that animal's going to be attracted to that smell, and the minute he gets near it, boom, it's got him. So they've got snares, they've got nets, they've got traps. They multiply traps and ways to ensure the snare or trap their victim. Those who avoid the snare or trap may be caught in a gin, where they are placed in all kinds of places. If a godly man can be cajoled or bribed or cowed or made angry, the wicked will make the attempt. And then notice it says Selah here at the end of verse 5. Now, why do you think David says Selah? What does that mean? What does Selah mean? It's not like Selah meal. Huh? Yeah, it's a pause. It's a musical pause. Now, what that's saying here is, you look at number 10 on your outline, it says the harp needs a tuning after such a strain that he's been playing about David and this trouble that he's having. They're playing real hard, and he needs to stop and get the harp back up a little bit. And also, it says the heart needs lifting up towards God and thinking about these things. So, if you're going through the persecution like David, if you're facing the snares like he was, or the dangers, the traps, the accusations, the slanders, all those things, your first reliable thing to do first is to go and seek out your Savior and lay your petition out to him, and he will take care of it. He is our shepherd, and he will guide his sheep on their paths and keep them safe. Remember, Paul, or the Gospels tell us that if we're doing the work of the Lord, then God will keep us safe, and he will keep us in the place we need to be, safe from the harm of the enemy. All right, that doesn't mean we go out and play with snakes, though, do we? We don't tempt the Lord, our God. Ashley, you don't play with them snakes. Leave them alone, or get your hoe out and take care of business. But we don't play with snakes. So, and that's the idea here, is don't play around with these afflictions or trials. Go straight to God and deal with him, and let him deal with the wicked. Let him deal with the persecutors. Let him deal with the traps and the snares. And you find often David refers to how those traps and snares were laid out for him, and then the wicked got caught in their own traps and snares. So you'll find that's true. God can use the traps and snares of the wicked to catch the wicked in. And he does that. And it's kind of a little bit of justice, you might say, for what they've done to you. A little bit of vengeance from God taking care of his saints. All right, we'll stop there. Let's all stand, and we'll close with a word of prayer.